how do we make, you have a string of syllables, and in every language, some syllables in a string of syllables are more prominent, some syllables are less prominent. So you have a string of syllables, some are more prominent, some are less prominent, and the question is what mechanisms make syllables prominent or not prominent in other languages and also in English. And Michael Ashby, who was a politician at UCL, developed this rather useful diagram which indicates 5 levels of prominence and what creates those prominence in English. So if you look down the right-hand side of this diagram, you can see how one might label the syllables, starting with the least prominent syllables in English, which is where you have a reduced vowel, and so you have a schwa in the syllable. And then going on down there, you then have full syllables, so full vowels in the syllables, but it's unstressed. So an example of that would be if you take the word yellow, obviously the stressed syllable is the first syllable. The second syllable doesn't have a schwa or a reduced vowel in it. It has a full vowel, but it doesn't have any stress on it. So that would be an example of the second thing down the right-hand side. Then you can get stressed syllables which don't have a pitch change on them, which aren't accented in the technical literature. So that you get in situations where you get the nuclear tone somewhere in the middle of the utterance, and then you get a long tail of syllables. And some of those syllables you'll have a sense of some sort of rhythmic beat on them, but they won't have any pitch changes on them. So that's where you get an unaccented but stressed syllable. And then finally down at the bottom he's got the pre-nuclear and the nuclear syllables, and that's where you have their stressed and some sort of pitch change docks onto those stresses. The intonation systems, I'm sure we're all aware, the intonation system and the stress system are completely different systems in terms of how they're driven linguistically, but pitch changes happen on stressed syllables. So the relationship is that intonation docks onto stressed syllables, but in fact the stresses are not actually connected to the stress system is the underlying system, and then the intonation happens on top of the system of stressed syllable utterance. So this was Ashby's basic categorization of 5 different levels of prominence for syllables in English. What I want to do is just for us to engage with this a little bit more closely. So I've got a small task for you. And remember, I don't have a handout, but what I've got is two short utterances. And what I'd like you to do, so now these utterances could be said in a number of ways. For the purpose of this exercise, we're going to say my watch has stopped. So watch is the nuclear syllable. And we're going to say I allowed myself an hour. Okay? What I want you to do is just take a piece of paper. Obviously we'll split those 2 sentences up into the syllables. And what I want you to do is just put a number on top of each syllable. There are 10 syllables in total. Just put a number on top of each syllable just to get a sense of how this arrangement, how this system of 5 different levels of prominence works. And then if you have time, just compare with your neighbour and see what you both think about that. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, now I suspect there's not one single answer. The way you treat the word myself will depend on how you said it to yourself. So myself is kind of ambiguous, you can do it in several ways. But I suspect you ended up with something looking a little bit like that. And we can see examples in those 2 sentences. We can see examples of all the different 5 levels of prominence that Ashby identified. Now this is a pretty comprehensive model about how prominence works in English.